So we have our emergency procedures on the screen. Please take a note of them. If you do have your mobile phone, please make sure it is switched to silent mode. Also, just noting we do have Councillor Dyer, I think, online. Is Councillor Dyer on there? Not quite yet. Okay, so it might be a little bit late. Okay, we'll go to our opening karakia. Whakataka hau ki te uru, whakataka hau ki te tonga, kia mā kina kina ki uta, kia mā taratara ki tai, e hiaki ana te atakura, he tio, hei huka, hei hauhu, ti hei mauriora. Moving through to apologies. So I'll put in apologies for lateness for Councillor Dyer, Councillor Tupou and Councillor Brown. So I'll move those over seconder. Councillor Briggs, all those in favour say aye. Those against no, declare that carried. Just before we get into the meeting as well, and I know it's not a full council, an ordinary council meeting where I would usually have the opportunity to mention things, but just with the passing of John Morrissey, which I've just whipped back from his service, I was able to be there for the first half an hour, but just acknowledging his passing and obviously his contribution to the Wainuiomata community. The rugby club, the Christmas parade, many of us would have been involved in, particularly those from Wainuiomata, and would have known John very well. So I just wanted to pass that on, and I've been able to already pass on gratitude for everything he's done through his life to the family as well. Okay, moving through to public comment. We do have Glenn Barclay and Muriel Dunaho. Welcome, guys. This is speaking on the from the Living Wage Movement, speaking on item 5, which is the water services delivery model. Over to you.
Kia ora tātou, and thank you. So I've met many of you before, and so I'm representing the Living Wage movement of Aotearoa, and it probably shouldn't come as a surprise to the council about our submission, and I guess the simple ask. So we think it's a simple ask, and we don't want to take up too much of your time if we don't have to. Glenn Barclay is a colleague and a Living Wage leader as well. So together we thought we'd address our submission. But just in terms of wider context, I did want to acknowledge this council, particularly in the Hutt City Council's leadership around the living wage, and acknowledge that right across the Wellington region, all of the councils, the only exception is Upper Hutt, but all of the councils, including the Greater Wellington Regional Council, are now all accredited living wage employers. And so from our perspective, I understand on your agenda for discussion is around the new water entity. And so we'd like you to consider just simply in our ask of supporting in principle that new water entity becomes a living, becomes an accredited living wage employer as well. And no surprises, secondly, support the principle of setting up a working party to support that entity and the process to ensure that process goes smoothly. Mostly that's because that's been the model, the successful model of relationship building that we've experienced as a movement, particularly with this council, and we see this council as a leader across the region, and just really appreciate all of your support. I'm going to hand it over to Glenn to make some comments, and we're happy to address any questions.
Not much to add to what Muriel said. This is a kaupapa we've taken to other councils in the region. We met with Marina in Wellington and made a similar case. It's pretty straightforward. We don't have a view on which of the options you go for. If you end up with a tweak of the status quo, Wellington Water currently not an accredited living wage employer, so we'd still like to visit the issue. But all the councils have a similar recommendation about the option. So if a new entity is set up, we would like to be around the table with you. So that's it.
Any questions? Okay.
could just take this opportunity to also just sort of thank the council. Every year since you've become an accredited living wage, you've made that commitment, and every year kind of hosted, an event that acknowledges and celebrates other living wage employers across our city. So we really appreciate that, and long may that continue. Thank you.
Councillor Barkin?
Permit, Chair, not a question, but a comment, if I may.
Just put a question mark at the comment. Yeah.
Thank you for your work.
Oh, that definitely wasn't a question. I'll leave that off.
A question mark?
No, that's all good. Thank you. Okay. Thank you very much. We've got no other members of the public here who wish to speak, so we'll move through to conflict of interest declarations. Is there any conflicts from members that are clear? Deputy Mayor Lewis? Seaview Marina? Yep. Anything else? No. Okay, so we will move through to item 5, which is the water services delivery model. This is on page 9 of our agenda. Bruce Hodgins, welcome. I'll pass it over to you.
Kia ora tātou. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a couple of comments for this. The main decision that's sought in today's paper is agreement on the future water services delivery model. Consultation undertaken locally and regionally shows strong support for the new Regional Water Services CCO, and you'll be aware that both Porirua City Council and Greater Wellington Regional Council made their decisions yesterday, and along with Wellington City Council are all going for the Regional Water Services CCO. The only other things that I'd just comment on is that in respect of recommendation 7, you may want to consider putting in the name of a specific alternate, say the chair of a particular committee. And in respect of the living wage submission, the place that you should consider putting something in, if that's what you want to support, is in the statement of expectations. So that those foundation documents, we're going to have another workshop on the 6th of August and a council meeting on the 19th of August. So that's the place to consider those things. So happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Bruce. So on the living wage question, would it be appropriate in these recommendations to have something along the lines of, council reaffirms its support of, accreditation in regards to the living wage, and that it would put this forward in the statement of intent process, something along those lines. Is that appropriate?
Yes, that could be appropriate. Certainly other councils have put various matters in as noting recommendations.
Okay, so we'll maybe just work on some words for that. Does that capture, I'm just checking I'm assuming there's support for that generally, so we'll get some words on that. Councillor Mitchell?
Yeah, I just wonder if we are putting in a recommendation, if we could also note this workshop that's coming up as an opportunity to raise other matters. Like Bruce, I kind of noted that I think all of the councils who to date have agreed to join this entity have been kind of preloading with what they variously describe as positions and principles and expectations, and we haven't done that, but I'm glad to hear we'll have that opportunity. I was going to ask about it otherwise, but just wonder if that could be referenced as well, that we'll have a workshop to further develop.
Yep, we'll do that. Is there any questions for Bruce? Councillor Edwards.
Yeah, it's not talking about preloading conditions. It's not strictly about the what we're about to vote on, which I'm fully in favour of, and I note that water meters are to be included no matter which option we were to choose today. But I just wonder, Bruce, if you could tell us or give us some information at what stage we get to talk about, if we do get to talk about, how charging with water meters works. Like there has been all sorts of talk about you get a certain amount of volume of water for free and then you charge for it. We haven't even debated those options as a council or a region. Does council get a chance to debate those sorts of things and then put it in a letter of intent, or are we saying that's a decision for this new body?
You can certainly discuss things, Councillor Edwards, at the workshop. The Minister's been pretty clear that in future they do expect water meters and they do expect volumetric charging. However, in the workshop that you have, one of the documents you'll be working on is the principles and content that you would want to put in a customer charter, which you can then place, so basically giving your messages as shareholders to the board. And I'm sure that certainly if I look at things like consumer charters in Western Australia, Victoria, then there are particular issues there around affordability for people that I think will probably fit along some of the lines you want to get to. Ultimately, charging over time is going to be a matter for the board.
Councillor Buchan.
Thank you. Just along those lines of things that I think it would be nice to, or useful for officers to bring us in terms of information to that statement of intent is how we actually look at reducing water demand and how the potential ways of setting up the new entity to actually be thinking about demand reduction. Just thinking it might be useful for officers to be able to bring some of that information to us. Is that possible?
I'm going to be completely frank. The first thing we have to do is decide what the new model is, and then there's a lot of work to do to get to that transfer by July of next year. Undoubtedly, part of the change for NewCo then that it will go through is about, and you'll see some of the water services delivery plan, which I need to bring to you, will be about what work's done, by when, and some of that will include demand reduction, which obviously has some of its genesis also in water meters.
Any other questions? No? Okay. So what we'll do is just pull up the recommendations just with those additional recs. So the addition is reaffirms council's support for living wage accreditation and put that position for and that we will put that position forward through the statement of intent process for the entity, and notes that any other matters council wishes to put forward on the statement of intent can do so at the workshop in August. Is that correct, Bruce? Yep, got that right. Does that cover you, Andy, or did you want to wordsmith that at all? That's fine. Yep. Councillor Briggs.
Just for recommendation for number 7, I would recommend Councillor Edwards as an appropriate alternative.
Oh, yeah, that was what I was next going to do. Yep. So, chair of the Structure and Regulatory Committee, which is obviously Councillor Edwards. If you voluntold, is that okay? Yeah. Happy with that. Okay, and was there one other thing, Bruce? Or that was it? As a councillor? Yep.
Yeah, just in terms of number 7, we have one representative on the AOG and the other one's an alternate.
Yep.
Right.
That's right.
It doesn't say that up there. As the council's representative after the mayor and chair, maybe you should say as the council's representative and alternate on the AOG.
Oh, yeah. Yep. Yeah. It delegates to the mayor and chair of the infrastructure committee as the council's representative and alternate on the AOG. Yep. Great. Okay, so I will move those recommendations 1 through to 11. Now, do I have a seconder for that? Councillor Tupou. Just to speak to these recommendations, first off, can I say a big thank you to everyone in our community who submitted and gave us their feedback through the consultation period in deciding what the future looks like for how we manage, invest and maintain our water infrastructure here in Lower Hutt and ultimately here in the region. I think it is a really positive thing, touch wood, with one council to go, that it looks likely that we will have a metropolitan asset-owning entity here in our region, and that ultimately it's putting forward a pathway for far greater sustainability financially and also for the assets themselves, I think, in how we go about managing our water infrastructure here in the region. This has been an issue for a very long time. Early 2000s we're talking, when reform was being talked about and how we manage our water assets and the likes. There has been a lot of uncertainty for those who work in the sector, with reforms being ditched and repitched and repackaged. And now I think the positive thing, and I can see this from the views of a range of political parties, is that, albeit we may not all agree that this was the perfect option, we're going to go with it and give certainty to actually make some progress on how we go about things in the future. So I just wanted to thank everyone's really constructive approach on this issue over a number of years, but particularly over the last 6 months, and for all of the work, the incredible amount of work that's happening behind the scenes, obviously from yourself, Joe, Jenny, and all of those who will now be working even harder once this decision's made to implement it, because it is a optimistic timescale, that 1st of July 2026. Challenging, I think, is probably a good word, but at the same time, that will help keep us, I think, with our eye on the prize of doing what we can in that period of time, albeit with a period of transition as well, moving forward. So I just wanted to thank everyone, and of course to say that this is probably the most significant change to Hutt City Council, certainly our balance sheet, since the council was formed in the, is it 1989, around then? Yes. So that is something worth acknowledging and recognising, that these things don't happen very often. And thank you for your engagement on this and constructive approach. Open it to the floor. Councillor Salinger.
Yeah, I just want to speak along similar lines to you, Mr. Mayor. Been through many discussions in my past life on water amalgamation in various forms. There's always been very fractured views, and progress has been piecemeal and imperfect on every occasion. So to get to the state now where we have almost got agreement from the Metro Councils, just one to go, I think you mentioned, and pretty much unanimous support, or at least it's around our council table, not sure of the others, but it is a great credit to all of those who participate in the work in progress from within our own organisation and probably other entities as well. So yeah, thanks to all who've got us to this stage.
Any other comment? Councillor Brooks.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm very similar to yourself and Councillor Salinger. There's been a significant amount of work over a long period of time to get us to this point. It's not always been, positive and happy, but it's been challenging and robust, and we've got to a point where we can now move forward. Acknowledging the work still to happen, but not only is the new entities formed, but also for this council going through an LTP amendment to kind of adjust to these changes and how we operate as a council, and what does local government look like now in Lower Hutt, in the wider region, as we move into this new era where what has been supported differently by this new entity. I'm in support also today of the public comment as well around the living wage and ensuring that's forefront of the discussion. No matter how we structure our services in the community and for the region, having fair pay for those that are doing the work should be normalised and standardised. So I thank the living wage movement for coming in today to remind us of our commitments as an organisation and us as individuals to ensure that part of the discussion as we move to this new phase.
Councillor Mitchell.
Yeah, I won't say too much. You already thanked the people who submitted in this particular consultation, but I'd just like to acknowledge too the very long way that the public have come in the last few years in terms of understanding and accepting that we had a problem in investing in our water infrastructure in the past. More importantly, we had a problem in what we can and could do in the future as a council and in terms of the investment that's required. And I think that our residents have come a very long way. You can see it in their support for this initiative to understand what the problem is and what the challenge is, and that this is the best solution available to us today. It is for the good of our ratepayers that we're taking this decision and making this significant change. And I think that they've come a very long way as well in understanding the challenges in front of us as a community and as a country.
Okay, I will put it to the vote. All those in favour say aye. Those against, no. Declare that carried unanimously. Great. Well done. Okay, moving through to Urban Plus Group Statement of Intent. Welcome, Cameron.
Thank you.
We have Cameron on Zoom, and we've got Darren here in person. So I'll pass it over to you, Darren, and then, of course, any comments you'd like to make, Cameron.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the purpose of this report is for the council to consider the statement of intent for Urban Plus for the 3 years commencing 1st of July 25. The Policy and Finance Strategy Committee saw this first draft on the 11th of March. So this is the final report, and any changes from that first draft is outlined in paragraphs 5 through 9. But it just mainly reflects market conditions and the result of those changes. I'll just hand over to Cameron. Is there anything else to say?
No, it's a good summary. Thanks, Darren. I've nothing else to add to that.
Okay, is there any questions? Councillor Briggs.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a question around with the new traineum, like previously with our CCOs, we've had more of a 1 year rolling cycle of statement of intents. So now with this longer period being put in place, what's the kind of, obviously directions here for that period of time, but the understanding that if a new council comes in and they see a new priority or new direction, how that would be reassessed and how that would be reconfirmed in the statement of intent, particularly in that first 12 months of a new council?
All I can say on that is that this will lock this one in for the current year. The first opportunity will be for the new council to document that in the statement of expectation. That will start negotiations in November, December period, and then they'll be reflected in the following period, starting from 1 July 26.
Councillor Mitchell.
Yeah, just a couple of quick questions. There's a reference in paragraph 14. It talks about Urban Plus Board having more flexibility about borrowing arrangements and perhaps looking to other sources of capital. I just wondered, I'm aware that there are a couple of CCOs, 2 or 3 around the country, that are able to borrow directly from LGFA, and I wondered if that was the case for Urban Plus or not.
Yes, definitely LGFA has the facility to lend to CCOs. We actually haven't set up that facility for our CCOs yet. It does require council to be guarantor, etc. So that's why we haven't put it in place. Not to say that we couldn't do that in the future.
Can I just add to that? The reference to this potential alternative sources of capital is outside LGFA. The reason being that, exactly as Darren has just said, with a guarantee being required, it's still effectively on your balance sheet or needs to be recognised in some way on your balance sheet. So what this provision is about is saying, could we explore alternative sources of capital outside that? So probably in the likes of commercial borrowing, but it's been worded in such a way that, it's only if we had exhausted the opportunities to utilise the existing funding lines from council, but we thought that there was something well worthwhile developing and we would need the extra capital for that.
Sorry, just we went muted there just right at the end, Cameron.
Sorry, yeah, my cell phone rang exactly the same time. I'm not sure where it cut off, but it was just to say that the that particular part of the SOI is being written in a way to give us the ability to explore, quite an important word, potential additional sources of capital outside of the existing funding line that we have from yourselves as the shareholder, so that if there were projects that we wanted to pursue and we thought were worthwhile pursuing and we couldn't do those within the existing funding lines, that we had the opportunity to explore those. I'm conscious that there are some, there are potentially other funding structures that could be made available that wouldn't expose council's balance sheet, but yeah, we need to explore that and chase it down and work out whether those are actually things that we wish to do at this stage. There's no planned additional projects for additional capital yet. We just want to create that flexibility.
Thank you. I just wanted to ask a question too. There's a sentence in the SOI that UPL will be agile and adaptable regarding any new or changes to existing central government housing policy. I just wondered, actually, it was announced last week that a Kāinga Order have cancelled a bunch of projects in Lower Hutt, designed and consented projects in Nainai and Avalon and Wainui-Yamata. Will Urban Plus be looking at the opportunity to take on any of those projects?
Absolutely. Indeed, we've already taken on one Kāinga Order project, and if it's the right opportunity and it fits the portfolio and the goals, then yeah, absolutely. One challenge for the Kāinga Order projects is that they tend to want quite a high asking price for them. So we just need to work that through, and weigh that up against the other objectives and projects that we have. But yes, we're certainly very interested in looking at those.
Any other questions? Councillor Edwards.
I think it's a case of my poor memory, but because no one else is asking a question about it, so I must have missed something. Could someone give me a reminder of why we're dropping the percentage of total our rental housing units predominantly being occupied by low-income elderly from 90% to 80%? Is that to give us more flexibility with other socially disadvantaged tenants to take on a wider range of socially disadvantaged tenants?
Yes, correct. That's absolutely correct.
Anyone else? No? Okay. We'll go through to the recommendations, which is 1 through to 4. Page 64. I'll move that. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Morgan, any discussion? All those in favour say aye. Those against no. Declare that carried. Thanks, Darren. Thank you, Cameron. And of course, Darren, stay there. Tim, welcome. So we'll now move through to Seaview Marina. Statement of intent.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So again, this is the final SOI document for Seaview Marina for the 3 years commencing 1st of July. Policy, Finance and Strategy Committee saw the first draft back on the 11th of March. And again, any changes to that document is outlined in paragraphs 5 through 8. And that's all I have to say. Hand over to you. Any other comments?
Thank you. Kia ora koutou, everybody. I have nothing further to add.
Any questions? Very good. Okay. We'll move straight through to the recommendations, 1 through to 4. And I'll move them. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Briggs. Any discussion? Councillor Stallinger.
I was just having some thoughts as I read through both Urban Plus and Seaview Marina's statements of intent, and particularly, as councillors know, I tend to look at the forecast results and like seeing the 10-year projections, which are very helpful. But it came to my mind that the rates of the return on the investments we have in both of our companies are very low in financial terms. I realise we have other reasons for the investments, strategic reasons, and they are very important. But it doesn't. I still think it's worth recognising that if we were to put the equity we have, which is some 70 million, in another form of investment, we would probably, of equivalent risk, we would expect to earn at least $5 million a year return on that. So I just think it's something perhaps for the new council to ponder in terms of the future of our two subsidiaries. If that is the case, and I'm sure it is, then are we satisfied that this is the best use of our funds? We may well conclude that it is, and the benefits the city gets and its communities from our continued investment is well worth that. Or we may consider some other form of investment interests in the two companies. So I just sort of make that point at this late stage in our training.
I think it's a very fair observation for the new council to consider. Yeah, it's good. Okay, any other comments? Put it to the vote. All those in favour say aye. Those against no. Declare that carried. Thank you, Tim. Thank you, Darren. We'll now move through to the adoption of the annual plan, and this is on page 120. Wendy, welcome. I will pass it over to you for any comments you'd like to make. And then we'll see if there's questions. Thanks.
Thank you. Yes, the purpose of today is to seek approval of the adoption of the annual plan. We do want to draw your attention to a small error that we discovered the week during some of our final quality checks and reviews. It concerns the signboard production on page 288 of your agenda. You will see there that it's stated as a charge of 179, but that's charge for the one board. You'll see the charge across is actually 726, which reflects the 2.2% increase on the previous year's charge. So it's just a typo that's been carried down that column. We just want to point that out to you and note that we'll correct this on the final annual plan before it is made public. Any other questions? Happy to take those. Thank you.
Any questions from members? Okay, if there's no questions, we'll move through to the recommendations, which is 1 through to 4. And of course, this is the final step in the process of adopting our annual plan. Now, what I would like to do is, I think this actually speaks a little bit to some of the comments and points Councillor Stallinger was making just before, is just some sort of, I would call them kind of consequential motions, but I think we can just build them into the list of recommendations. So I'll just put those up on the screen. So what I'd like to put forward is notes that, in addition to what's there, is the notes that the work officers have already done, the work officers have already undertaken in anticipation of council approving a new water entity structure. So there obviously has been preparation for that, as we would expect, but that decision has now been made. And as part of that ongoing work, ask officers to prepare budget review options for the incoming council to consider, which includes a focus on service prioritisation, affordability, and value for money. So that is to reinforce our desire for the new council to be able to look to have some information sooner rather than later when it comes into play, to be able to consider those matters as well. Councillor Mitchell?
Yeah, just for clarity, item 4 is about the new water entity structure only?
No, so that's about the council overall, the council here.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I guess I was thrown by as part of this ongoing work after number 3 notes the work officers have undertaken. So I wonder if we should just take out those first words and just start with ask officers to prepare.
Yeah, that's fine. It was I suppose I was trying to make the point that work has already been underway.
Yeah, no, I just thought it was tied to number 3 because of the wording, but it's not.
Yeah, yeah. I think, yeah, we can remove, that's fine. We know the intent. Okay. Comfortable with that? Yep.
Is it possible to take 5 separately?
Yep, we can do that.
If so, happy to second the rest of them, if that's, and make a comment.
Okay. What we'll do is just general. I mean, I think it's simpler just to move and second all of them, and we can take 5.
I'm happy to second them.
So, yep,
Didn't
Councillor Briggs. Okay, so we'll move, and what we'll do is we'll do 1, 2, 3, 4, and 6 now. So I'll put those to the vote. All those in favour? Oh, sorry, do you want to discuss those ones as well? Yep, okay.
Yes, just briefly, following my comments in a similar vein, I suppose, to those in relation to the new water entity, I just did want to recognise, again, being at late in the training, the excellent work we've received in supporting our decision-making through the annual plan process, and particularly I found the financial information very helpful. It's great having the consistent format and style of presenting each time, so I've kind of become familiar with it and find it much easier now to flick through and find my way. And also the quality of the documents that we've produced. So I just wanted to pass on my thanks to staff and recognise that.
Any other comment on these recommendations? Put it to the vote. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Those against no. Declare that carried. Okay, moving through to item recommendation 5, which is agrees to adopt the annual plan as attached to Appendix 1 of this report. And I'll just make a few comments on that to kick us off, and then open it up to the floor. So first off, can I just acknowledge, as I did before, all of the work that's gone into the preparation of this annual plan. Obviously, it's a follow-on from the work that occurred through our long-term plan process, which was where a grunt of the work was done. But as it seems to be every year, there is no short of challenges around budget pressures, service, levels of service, and other issues that emerge that we needed to grapple with. And I just want to thank everyone for their professional approach to that as well. I think it's important to recognise that any rates increase at the moment for households in the current economic climate is going to be unwelcomed. And I think that we have taken a balanced approach in making sure that we aren't kicking the can down the road when it comes to particularly that investment in water infrastructure, and just under half is in water infrastructure, about half is in water and transport with this budget, and that is really important. We could have taken the politically convenient approach and slashed our rates in election year and gone, look at us, look how great we are, we're bringing your costs down, don't worry about it, and then probably had to whack them up even more next year, and all of the uncertainty that type of budget approach takes, particularly out there to, those contractors and businesses who we rely on to actually do the work. So I think that I just want to thank you because I know that hasn't been the approach necessarily in other parts of the country. And to be quite honest, talking to my mayoral colleagues, they won't say it publicly, but they'll acknowledge it privately, that it's kind of politics and what's happened elsewhere. So I think that in saying that, we've obviously brought down what our rates increase was proposed to be in the original long-term plan. The team have worked really, really hard to find savings and efficiencies where they can, and we've made a few tough calls to be able to bring that back as well. So we've been able to pull it back a little bit, but acknowledging, as I say, whether we're looking at 13, 12, or even 5-6%, this will be an unwelcome increase for our community. So it's a difficult position to be in. I would say that given this is my last annual plan that I'll be presiding over, I am concerned about the future of local government when it comes to financial sustainability, affordability for ratepayers. The compounding impact of large increases, rates increases, has a huge impact, particularly on those who are on fixed incomes, are living alone, are a retired community and the likes. We know, and I know that a broken record on this, that the impact of these types of increases has a disproportionate effect on them in comparison to two-income household on relatively good incomes, it's actually probably a smaller cost in comparison of their overall budget or what they pay in taxes to central government or in totality. So there will need to be change at some point. My fear is that up and down the country, we won't see that change until, in essence, councils start to go bankrupt. Technically can't go bankrupt because the ratepayer will always bail them out, or commissioners will be in place, but we do not be in a position of weakness. We are looking at the type of change that's needed. And that's not just asking government for more new revenue streams. I think it is also around looking harder at ourselves and saying, what can we do better, albeit we do need the government to come to the party with some serious reforms to I think, pave the way for a more sustainable future for local government. The reason I share all of that is because our council is in no different position to what many councils across the country are facing, and I see that with my local government New Zealand role. And it is important that we continue to hammer that home, that context to our community, because if government isn't going to listen to councils, hopefully they'll listen to the people that they serve and represent, if they are able to acknowledge and see this issue for what it is as well. But I acknowledge that that's challenging when it's very easy to simply talk about lowering the rates and the likes. So again, thank you to all of the team. As I say, it's my last annual plan. It's been an absolute privilege to be able to do 6 of these over the last wee while, and obviously all the ones prior to that. I'll try not to get too emotional about that, but I just wanted to say that the difference that I have seen and it's acknowledged by Councillor Stallinger as well just before, the quality of information for governors that we've seen continuously increase over that period of time since I've been involved, but also over the last 6 years. We're always challenging ourselves to do better, which is great, and it makes it a heck of a lot easier as a governor to be able to obviously make these decisions and be engaged and a part of that process throughout. And I'm confident that that's a culture which we've now embedded within this organisation that will continue, regardless of whoever's at the helm or whatever, or the people, because that culture will live on. So I'll hand it over to the floor for any comments members wish to make. Councillor Dyer.
Kia ora, thank you. I won't repeat the reasons why I'll be voting against the rate increase again today. As we've made a decision now to change the way we deliver water services, there absolutely is an opportunity for the next council to really look at the budgets line by line. I still think we shouldn't be fully funding the depreciation on the assets that won't be ours in 1 year's time. But I did want to just make the point that we really have made some really tough calls, and I did want to really acknowledge the personal cost to some of the cuts that we've had to make. I know they haven't been easy, and I know our team has been working extremely hard to find cuts wherever they can be. So just wanted to acknowledge the team that's been affected by some of these changes we've made, and also acknowledge the team for reducing the rates from what we said just a year ago we would go out with. We have made some really tough calls to get down to where it is.
Any other comments? Okay, I'll put it to the vote. Councillor Stallinger.
Just pondering things a little bit there. It's much like Councillor Dyer. I've made my position clear at the previous meeting. I certainly don't intend to repeat any of those comments. Very much appreciated your comments, Mayor, just before, and agreed with what you've said about the position of local government, including our own council, and something needing to change. And your suggestions for the future, I think, were wise as well. I suppose the only point of difference I would have to what you've said is I really thought that fundamental review of how we operated could have happened a bit quicker, and that's really the essence of my vote today, which will be against the item number 5, I think now it is, or 4. I lost track. the remaining resolution. Thanks.
Councillor Briggs.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just speaking in favour of recommendation 5, which we're about to put for us to vote on, acknowledging all of the work that's gone into this, the community input, the willingness of elected members and officers to pivot and work within the constraints that we have as well. On your point, Mr. Mayor, around the reality of the situation is really clear to me that there needs to be change at a systemic level. And I think when we kick the ball to touch, that relieves the pressure from community, but also relieves the awareness of how dire that situation is. And just to be upfront and honest with them that this is a really challenging position that we're in, and to not give any expectation that it's something that we can just strike away with a pen or a decision this afternoon. I do hear it, I see it, I feel it, the impact of every rates rise on our community. And this is not an easy decision to make, but it's still the right decision to make. If we were to change our annual plan any further, that would be a significant reduction in services to our community as well, which they have not asked for, that they would be very upset to see that change. Noting that the most significant increase is in our core infrastructure, in our water, a life source that we need to be able to survive. And for me, it's fundamental. And that's why today I'll be voting in favour of this annual plan, acknowledging all of the work, all of the views that have gone into it.
Okay. Councillor Tupou.
Mr Mayor, I congratulate you on this being your final annual plan. We've all sworn an oath or an affirmation to serve in the best interests of the city. And this is probably a condensed version of my previous speech, but it is easy to say that we won't put up the rate slightly. And it's probably within my own best financial interest, but looking across the city, the needs of the people, the results that are coming from the resident satisfaction survey, that there continues to be a high expectation from our communities for good quality services. So if we owe it to them to maintain that through these uncertain, tough economic times, then we're going to need to keep up with the rate of cost increases across. And the need is there. I'm hearing from our people on the front line and the coalface at our libraries and pools, and they're more than just staff or community workers. They become the go-to for a myriad of our communities. So I think in the best interest of the city that we must keep our eyes on the ball. We can't afford, as you say, Mr Mayor, to kick this can further down the road. And what better way when we approach discussions on how we work better as a region than to model that in our own city. Kia ora.
Any other comment? Okay, I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Those against, no.
No.
Okay, it's carried. Okay, moving through to the setting of the rates, which is on page 303 of the agenda. And Jenny, would you like to make any comments?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. So this paper follows on from the approval of the annual plan. So it's basically got Appendix 1 as the detailed rates resolutions. We have had this resolution piece checked by our external legal reviewer. I just wanted to draw your attention to paragraph 41, where there's reference to the change in the number of instalments. That's moving from 6 instalments down to 4. And there's some information in there about the communications plan that we've got lined up to support ratepayers. Thank you.
Okay, any questions? No, so we'll move the recommendation, which is in front of us, page 303. Seconded by Councillor Morgan. Any discussion? All those in favour say aye. Aye. Those against, no. Declare that carried. Moving through to the Ratepayer Assistance Scheme on page 323. Jenny.
Yep. Thank you. Okay, so we had a briefing on the 5th of June with the whole team from LG&Z, etc., and there were lots of questions around this Ratepayer Assistance Scheme. On paragraph 13, page 325, it sets out the primary applications that the scheme will apply to. So it's rates postponement, deferred development contributions, and property improvement loans, which could include things like solar panels, etc. So this paper really is seeking your agreement to support participation in the Ratepayer Assistance Scheme in this development phase, also seeking your agreement to contribute $100,000. And just let you know that in the last week we've had Wellington City Council contribute $500,000, Hamilton contribute $500,000, and New Plymouth $300,000. And Scott from LNZ tells me that they are very close to their $2.5 million target. They're expecting to get there by the end of this month, so it's all on track. I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Yeah, I can certainly. I was in a National Council meeting today, and the momentum is really ramping up for this. And I think that there's the potential of actually having a really exciting announcement even at the conference next month. It feels like this could happen, which is good. Councillor Stallinger, then Councillor Briggs.
It's excellent to see this coming forward. My only question was the 200,000, how that figure was calculated, if there was a kind of a basis for it. But having heard of all the contributions to date, I can kind of see it as fairly relative to those.
Yeah, it was just really an estimate that we thought was appropriate in the context of other councils. Yeah.
Councillor Briggs.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Jenny, for the work on this. I think my only question is around the notification to our community once it is live and accessible for them to be able to apply for. I think in the past when we've had other similar schemes in-house, there's been a really low uptake and at times been disappointing the amount of work that goes in to actually have a little return on it. And so just trying to get some clarity and kind of, peace of mind that there will be a plan to implement comms to the wider community so there's awareness, and therefore we're going to get actual benefit in the community here in the Hutt.
Well, I think the really exciting piece about this is that it's for the whole of New Zealand. So there'll be a comms plan rolled out in line with that. So, I think we will see a definite step up in that communication. Obviously, it's early days and we don't know exactly how that's going to be happening, but, I expect that there'll be a much bigger uptake with this.
Any other questions? Was there a hand over the side? Yeah, Councillor Parkin.
I'm just wondering, is there any advantage in increasing the amount that we're contributing to this, or is it an appropriate amount in terms of the level of risk?
LGNZ, I've communicated with them about our intentions with this paper. They've seen the paper as well, and they're comfortable with the amount that we're proposing. And they certainly haven't said, please give us more.
I think with the momentum now as well, that well and truly that target should be hit. So, yeah. Okay. Any other questions? No? Okay, so we have the recommendations here, 1 through to 6. I'm happy to move them, seconded by Councillor Edwards. Just to speak briefly, I think this is a fantastic initiative from Local Government New Zealand, so just an acknowledgement to Scott Necklin and all of the people behind that. I can see this being, in 10 years' time, if all goes to plan, being something that we can look back on and say, what a fantastic initiative, a bit like the LGFA and the difference, the huge difference that's made for councils up and down the country. And also it's something that obviously will significantly benefit those who choose to utilise it, and that is our community. The other thing which is a big part of my support for this is that we know we have a challenge with development fee contributions and the way that they're currently structured. We've had our developers and development community speak to us about that, particularly in the wider climate of being able to get houses built. And this is potentially a tool for them to be able to fund development fee contributions in a different way, which removes some of those barriers or issues and access to finance for them. And I think that comes at a good time and will be able to be factored into council's decision-making in the next triennium and how we navigate development contributions, albeit it could be a little bit academic if government takes the lead on changing how they're structured and how they can be paid for as well. But I think it's a good thing. So I'll pass it to the floor if there's any comments. Councillor Edwards.
Yeah, like you, Mr. Mayor, I think this is a hugely exciting initiative. It's good for climate change. It's good for elderly people who want to stay in their home and are worried about how to afford rates, they'll be able to defer them at a much more, cost-effective way. I'm hoping it's going to be able to use for those people who are facing bills because there's infiltration problems with their stormwater into sewage. So this gives them a good option there. And us putting up to $200,000, I think, is a very worthwhile investment on behalf of our community. So basically, the sooner this scheme can get going, the better, as far as I'm concerned.
Councillor Briggs, then Councillor Shaw.
Yeah, very supportive, like Councillor Edwards and yourself, Mr Mayor. I think the $200,000 otherwise we'd be paying more than that internally with our own bespoke systems, changing them year on year to different reactive situations. To be part of a clear program that any New Zealander can kind of tap into makes sense to me. And as I was saying before in the questions, my concern around these things is always how the information gets to the people that need it the most. And quite often, normal channels don't get there, as we've found in the past. And so hopefully there's a bit of innovation in the way that they message it, the way that they get it out there. And in 10 years' time, people to see it as normal would be fantastic.
Councillor Shaw.
Yeah, I fully agree with everybody's comments here. And I do remember back when we had that briefing where LGNZ came and presented to us on this. And I don't think I got really excited about it, but I thought it was an answer, or possibly an answer for us, particularly with our rates increases that we're putting forward, and already been mentioned the number of people who are going to find this really challenging. So really appreciate this opportunity to help those people, and I think it's a great move on our part. So thank you very much.
Councillor Tupou.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I think there are a lot of funding cuts in our communities for programs that have helped with home improvements. I'm thinking of Tuanui Wainuiamata and working with healthy homes. The home improvement component, I think, is a very good help to not just the elderly, but some of our whānau who are multi-generational and who have been in their homes for decades. In places like Wainuiamata, where they can actually now insulate, and we have a scheme in place that will support whānau and including young people moving into homes. So I think, Mr Mayor, that this is a long time coming, and I think it's a new way of, rather than just councils being the rate collector, that we want to walk alongside whānau and homeowners to ensure that they are leading healthy homes. Kia ora.
Thank you. Okay, I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour say aye. Those against no. Declare that carried. Good stuff. Okay, moving now through to item 11, which is the CityLink Bridge Procurement, page 348. John and Eddie, welcome. I'll pass it straight over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Kia ora, councillors. So basically, this paper is two-pronged. So we're giving you an update on the work that's happened in relation to the CityLink Bridge, and then seeking your approval to proceed in around the end of November to proceed through to design and construct procurement. I'll hand over to Eddie, who'll have a little bit more of an update around the various aspects of where we've got to from here.
Thank you, John. Kia ora koutou. The paper tried to summarise the work the project team has done since bringing the project in-house back in December 2024. And since then, quite a lot of work has gone in to produce a specimen design, investigate two different bridge forms, one cable network arch bridge, and the other one is through girder bridge, just to provide council with more options in terms of affordability and value for money. We also tested that alternate option with the consenting authority, and we got quite a positive feedback that is in general accordance with the consent. The team has also done quite a lot of work in terms of design integration with our regional council colleagues, with NZTA, and those discussions are ongoing. We also have updated the cost estimates for those two options and can confirm that they are within our LTP budgets. And now where we are at the moment, we wanted to carry on. There is still more work to do in terms of finalizing those specimen design requirements with our partners, development of the procurement plan to look at what work we can give to the local market, how much percentage of the work we can give to the local market. Also look at the construction and integration works with our partners to make sure we understand those construction interfaces, and we can put that into our documentation, and basically getting the procurement documentation up and ready for the November market procurement. So there's still quite a bit of work to do, but just want to provide you confidence that we are on track for that, and seeking your approval to delegate that market release to the CEO, Mayor, and the Chair, please.
Okay. Any questions, Councillor Parkin?
Kia ora. Thank you for the report. There was a couple of things queries that jumped into my mind. One was the use of the word traditional. The Network Arch Bridge has actually been around for, my investigation was something like 70 odd years. So I'm not quite sure that traditional is the most appropriate term to use there. But my request is particularly around the carbon and carbon reduction targets. I note that we've got that in point 28 as a consideration under climate change, but I'm just wondering if it can actually be brought up to the level where we've got specific environmental factors under item 17. I think there are climate change feedback in terms of carbon reduction or carbon costs in terms of embedded carbon should actually and installation should actually be brought to the forefront so that we can see it. Obviously, the use of materials that aren't concrete based are going to reduce our carbon emissions. In theory, they should be cheaper to use when we're using less material as well. So it would be good to be able to see that from a transparency point of view.
Through you, Mr. Chair, noted. Absolutely will do that in development of the principles requirements. Thank you.
You have a question, Councillor Mitchell.
Yeah, this may well come out in the wash in terms of procurement and design, but I was just curious about the statement. It's in the table of comparisons between the two bridge types on page 350. The statement that a steel girder bridge requires construction to drill into the aquifer. A few years ago now, we downscaled our aspirations for buildings in Riverlink from being very tall buildings to shorter buildings in order not to pierce the aquifer, but nonetheless, there are multi-storey buildings that will be constructed as part of Riverlink that will not pierce the aquifer. So I'm just wondering why a reasonably modest pedestrian bridge requires construction to drill into the aquifer, but I don't understand.
Thank you. I haven't yet sort of asked that question in detail in terms of how much, but I understand it's all about the dead and the live load of the bridge. It's and current indications are that based on the through girder bridge design the Alliance did at that time, there was a risk that further design development could mean either we could be very close or could be just going into the equitard and that risk. So I think predominantly from that dead load and live load perspective, there is a risk that we could, but obviously that doesn't go with the steel girder bridge.
Yeah, so presumably that's a design question and it could be designed around. Yeah, I was just kind of curious with the assertion that it would require piercing the aquifer. I'm sure it could be worked around either way.
Okay. Any other questions? No? Okay, we'll move through to the recommendations, which are in front of us. Pretty simple. 1 and 2, move those. Seconder, Councillor Briggs. Any discussion? All those in favour say aye. Those against, no. Declare that carried. Thank you, gents. Okay, item 12, which is the non-binding referendum question. And this is on page 358 of your agenda. I will speak briefly to this paper. As you are aware, Porirua City Council passed a question to put to their residents at the local body elections in October, and have asked the region to consider, the other councils to consider putting a similar or the same question to their residents to get a broader gauge of where people are at when it comes to amalgamation. So that's really where this has primarily come from. In the paper, you'll see that there are 3 options. Option A is to go with the same as what Porirua asked, which is looking particularly at a single council for the Metropolitan area. Option B is for there to be exploring amalgamation generally. So that could be a number of different options, with it, like for example, a joint Hutt Valley or the likes. And option C is just to not ask the question. So I'll leave it there. Is there any questions? Councillor Morgan?
I'm just wondering, have you had indication from Upper Hutt if they are intending to put this in and approve this as well and do this?
I've only heard informally that they were still considering that option, considering it, but I don't know if we've heard anything else formally.
We haven't heard anything else formally, but also they don't have a poll to answer in relation to Māori wards, so their position is quite different all round, really.
Yes, I should say, of course, part of the reason was that we're going to have to do a poll anyway on Māori wards, and it's obviously an opportunity of having an additional question. Councillor Shaw?
Yeah, I'm a bit concerned about the potential confusion which could arise. We've got varying options being considered by different councils. Wording is similar but vastly different. And yeah, I just think, is there any way that it can be clear that that the 2 options are actually quite different if we choose one or the other, or even item C?
Yeah, if we were to choose option, I mean, if it was option A, obviously they'll be the same. If it was option B, there is a recommendation here which does talk to providing some supporting information, which that would be delegated to the Mayor, committee chairs and chief executive to make sure that there's some clarity on that. And obviously the electoral officer might have a view, or may well be in charge of that process, I should say, to ensure that there is clarity in any supporting info. Councillor Parkin, then Councillor Morgan.
Kia ora. I'm just wondering whether officers have thought about, is there a way of phrasing the question or making it multiple questions so that we actually get a little bit more useful information out of this? I'm just, particularly the second option, I could see that being interpreted by residents as, oh, let's combine with Upper Hutt, let's combine with or Porirua or Wellington or a super city, and that not actually providing the next council particularly useful information. So I'm just wondering, have we looked at whether or not it's feasible to ask a multiple pronged question in a poll, or is this not appropriate? Sorry, a referendum, non-binding referendum, or is that not appropriate?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, my advice to you is to keep this as simple as possible. It's non-binding, and all it does really is give you a baseline, in effect, as to where the population are at. One takes you to one single council. The second one takes you to options. We're going to be quite limited in terms of what we can tell people in the supporting information. The more complicated you make it, the more unlikely it is people will complete it. So my advice is keep it simple. And really, if you go with this, what you're signalling is simply taking a baseline for what that question is ahead of, readings in the last week. Then across political parties, these matters are coming up for consideration in any event. So keep it simple is the advice that we have given, and we have helped with question B as opposed to A.
Councillor Morgan.
Kia ora. Yeah, I just feel a bit uneasy about this. It feels very rushed to me that there isn't even alignment necessarily across the region to moot this question. And if we are, I would think we should be mooting the same question for consistency. So when responses come back, it's apples with apples, not apples with pears, which could be very confusing for people and our voters and people in the community. So I'm not sure if that's absolutely not a question, but just saying, yeah, I'm finding this a bit of a challenge.
I can tell you that being here since 2010, simply talking about amalgamation has been a challenge. And there is, unless we can, I don't think we'll ever find a position where you can get all the councils aligned on an approach. Hence why I think taking this step, actually in a very, this is non-binding, it's saying, should we even explore this? It's a very gentle question in my mind. Sorry, Councillor Brown, then we've got Deputy Mayor Lewis.
Thank you. If the question goes in the referendum, will there be supporting information for residents as ultimately amalgamating it is about lowering, efficiency, raising efficiencies and by doing that, lowering rates. So if we must sort of start the conversation to be responsible elected members, but will there be information provided as well as the question?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, there'll be some very basic information. What there won't be is a business case one way or the other, because that's not where you're at. You're literally getting a baseline for the conversation. My pre-election report, which is due out by the 18th of July, will actually say that given water reform, given RMA reform, given funding and financing, that this is me giving my personal opinion, which is I must do as a chief executive, that at some point in anything other than the short to medium term, conversations around form, function and structure are absolutely inevitable. And that's the view pretty much across New Zealand. So for here, all it will be is a very basic, we're asking the question, explaining what it's not. The information will be as important about saying what it isn't, i.e. you're not being asked to make a choice once and for all about what you want. You're simply gauging your interest in having the conversation at this stage. And we'll obviously work with you all to get an idea of what that is, but I wouldn't want anyone to think it will be a business case and War and Peace. It will be very simple. I think it's important that it's simple.
Thank you. I'm agreeing with option one, to keep it simple, and my question is in relation around the fact that we've got two polls we're asking. There's the referendum for Māori wards as well. If just the layout of the paper if we can have eyes over that, just so they're not together. I'm just a bit concerned about the fact that there are two polls, and depending on the person's thinking on one, might fall into the next one. So if they can be separated, that was all.
I think we've got to have our voters are pretty smart. I mean, I don't want to, I feel like,
Absolutely not. These are matters for our electoral officer. And I'm amazed he hasn't beaten a path to the table to say it. But I know, Mr. Electoral Officer, that I'm correct. Is that right?
Thank you. That was the answer. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Councillor, I think it was Councillor Tupou, then Councillor Mitchell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And it's not the same line of questioning, it's similar in that because we agreed to the Māori ward question first, should that not take precedence in terms of the referenda papers?
Yeah, look, I think we can take this offline. It's not a decision. We could, yeah. Well, let's. Do you want to comment on that, Bruce? Is that ultimately a decision for you and how that's done?
Yeah, the voting paper will be a combined voting paper, so it's how we position them to fit depending on the number of candidates that might be sitting for each. So I'll have to carefully place them so that they all fit on the voting paper, but it will be a combined voting paper, and I have taken account of your views.
And I think it's fair to say that given the Māori War question is a binding question and does have an impact, that has, that is going to be more significant. There's no question about that. Yeah. Okay, Councillor Mitchell.
Yeah, just questioning whether there is any value in us asking either of these questions if all of the parties don't also agree to ask the same question. I.e., we know that Porirua have agreed to ask this question. Say Wellington didn't. Would there be any value in us continuing with a referendum question if Wellington aren't asking their people the same?
Yeah, I personally think there's a lot of value because this debate or issue is not going away. And I think for the incoming council, they can have a gauge on where our people are at. Simple as that. So regardless of whether it's viable or not, I don't think this is going to, even if us and Porirua came back and was overwhelmingly supportive of amalgamation, or even everyone said that, that doesn't mean that it's then going to happen. But if the other councils had also asked the question, given the lack of progress we've had on this issue.
Yeah, I'm not saying that amalgamation is going to happen either way. I'm asking about the question, are we exploring possibilities? If Wellington refused to even ask their residents whether they should explore possibilities, is that likely to happen, that there'll be any involving Wellington in the next training? I don't know. And really, I guess where I'm heading with this is, if we were to choose either of these questions, we could make it conditional upon all other councils also asking the question.
Yeah, but that's basically saying it won't happen because Wellington City aren't putting it to their council.
They aren't?
That's my understanding.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Good to know.
Yeah. My understanding is that we don't know for sure about Upper Hutt, but I've already identified they're not doing a Māori, they don't have the same issue around the Māori wards. Wellington are not doing it this time. That doesn't really matter if this is about you getting a baseline for what's happening here. And whether you ask the questions or not, inevitably, as I say, with water reform and RMA, some discussions of some sort are going to have to take place at some point. It's whether you want to have a baseline of your people for a cost that is significantly cheaper here than if you would have to go and ask them separately. It's kind of that simple, really.
Councillor Briggs.
I know this is kind of straying right into debate like some of the previous stuff, but for me it's pretty fundamental. In the last 12 years I've been involved in local government, there's been an ongoing conversation, and often elected members try and campaign to the community what's best in their interest, when actually it's what's best of the current elected members to keep their roles, just being matter of fact. And the challenge of that is we haven't actually asked the community, do you want this discussion to take place and do you want to be involved in that discussion? It's always been campaigning to the community and what their view already is, and that's quite unhelpful. I think for an incoming council to have a gauge, no matter what the question is there a willingness, is there an appetite out there, is actually really helpful. If Wellington choose not to be well informed in the community's desires, that's their shortcoming. Why would we join in on having less information around our community's desires and wants, particularly looking forward to the future with so much change occurring? To me, it's a pretty common sense opportunity while we're already doing a referendum, while we're already engaging our community, and if nothing else, it may actually increase the voter turnout because people are interested in this debate as much as voting. And so to me, it's a no-brainer. No matter what question it is, A or B, I think we should be getting it. We should be getting well informed. We should be listening to our community, and this isn't going to go away, even if we want it to.
Councillor Stallinger, then Councillor Barrett.
Are you taking all the debate now, Mr. Mayor?
We are kind of in debate. I mean, I'm happy to get a gauge of where we're at.
Yeah, I don't have a question. Yes, I looked with interest at the question that came through from Porirua, and I didn't actually think that was a well-worded question, only because of a couple of reasons. First, I thought it was a little bit leading because it kind of says this is going to be, relevant stuff's going to happen, and it's going to be appropriate. Do you want it? So I was a little bit turned off by that and thought maybe if the last couple of phrases were dropped off, it would be simpler for people to understand what was meant, because how do you keep things local? It's all open for speculation. I do think it's a good idea to ask a question though, and I agree with the points made in that regard, because it's not particularly expensive. And we have asked these questions before, but it was a long time ago. If I remember roughly correctly, it's probably about 12 years ago. And the results of that were very clear, and 80% did not want one council. I'm not quite so precise on the merging with Upper Hutt question. I think Lower Hutt residents were fairly equal-minded on that one, but Upper Hutt did a similar poll and they were dead set against it. So I do favour option B, because I think option A could just be like a no, we don't want that, and then we're left with nowhere to go on a question we're going to have to address. Whereas option B, we're more likely to get a stronger support. Now, we won't know which option people favour, but I see that as really giving us a licence to have the discussion around the region, and we can follow up through smaller local statistically based sample size surveys when we need to, should that come. So, yeah, I'm happy to support option B.
Councillor Barrett.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I'd just like to say that, you know, I was first elected in 1998, and this is about then, and probably even before, that this question has been going since. There's still lots of speculation out there in the community, and there's probably not one new council that is not faced with this question from its residents. We just need to keep in mind that we're only asking the question here at this moment. We're only asking the question. We need the input from our residents to even formulate any discussion that's going to allow us to go further. So there'll be lots of things in people's minds. There'll be lots of ifs and buts and maybes and scary tactics and all the rest of it. But let's just get down to basics and ask the question.
So would you have a preference, Councillor Barrett, B? It says
option B.
Yeah, gotcha. Thank you. Okay, I think we are now kind of getting a bit of a gauge of where people are at. Is there any final questions before we put forward? Yep, Councillor Edwards.
Not so much a question, but it's a comment, and I come from a different perspective. I don't think we should be asking the question, to be honest. I absolutely agree that discussions about amalgamation are more or less inevitable. The water reforms and RMA reforms make that so. I don't know that a lot of people realise the impact of those reforms and what it's going to mean. Option A, for me, locks us into only one option to do with amalgamation. I think that's wrong. Option B is better. It gives us more scope to explore. But my question is, what say the poll result is, no, we don't want you to talk about amalgamation. I think the phrase used by Councillor Stellinger was we needed a licence to have those discussions. I don't think we do need a licence to have those discussions. Council is elected to make tough decisions, to explore things that are in the interests of ratepayers. We are going to have to investigate this. And I fear I think a lot of, I agree with Mayor Barry that our electors are smart, but, you know, this is kind of a question, you know, that you need a whole lot of background information on before you say yes or no. And I think a lot of people, a little bit fearful, are going to be inclined to say no. And then where does that leave us next triennium? We know we have to have amalgamation discussions, but we've just had a poll that told us, no, we don't want you to have those discussions. And people will say, you betrayed us. You know, we had this vote, we said don't investigate, and you're investigating. I think those investigations are inevitable, and we should just get on with it, save ourselves $20,000, because ultimately, if our discussions as a region do come up with an amalgamation model, there will be a referendum. It's so hugely important an issue, there will be a referendum. That's the appropriate time.
So Councillor Brown's been waiting a while. Sorry, I missed. The hand was hidden behind the record. I didn't quite pick it up. Sorry, Councillor. Sorry, we can't hear you. Apologies.
It's not a question. It's a comment. Putting aside that I had questions about the Māori ward referendum question at the same time, and I feel pretty comfortable now that, you know, we can certainly have two questions at once. But we do get questioned a lot and criticised that we don't go in early with telling community what's coming, you know, what could be ahead. And this question is non-binding, but we need to get an indication of how the public are feeling. I think when we did it last time, there was a lot of strong feeling against a referendum, but they were very different times. People are feeling very, very challenged by the rates going up so much every year and it colliding with our cost of living, that we may find that the views of our residents have changed. And like you say, that they are pretty aware that, you know, with talking about amalgamation brings efficiencies. Across New Zealand, is it 60-something councils we've got? It doesn't make sense in this day and age that we have so many different entities that require a whole operation around them. And as you say, we are just starting, you know, putting the question out early so that they're aware of what may, you know, what is certainly coming ahead. So I support B. Apologies, yeah.
I think I think that it's a good point from Councillor Brown that certainly in the supporting information, while we need to keep it simple, it does make it clear that this is to give a gauge of an issue that we see as inevitable with the change that's coming, and we want to get a gauge, but it does not lock in one way or the other. Councillor Parkin has been waiting. Go. Yep.
Kia ora. Just reflecting on what all the councillors have been saying, there's some really interesting challenges here. The value for money one makes this attractive to ask the question, because the number of people that we will reach at a very good cost per piece of feedback is really good. The challenge I have is, how are we asking the right question? And as Joe quite rightly said, I was probably making things far too complicated, as I have a habit of doing. You said it very nicely. But I think that actually leads us leads me to say that we should be looking at and asking question A, because it's the simplest question. And if the answer to A is no, and our public say no, we do not want to look at a mega city or super city for Wellington, that still leaves us the option of looking at smaller amalgamations, and actually gives us quite a direct steer that, okay, if we have to do some form of amalgamation and our residents say no to a super city, that actually gives us a really good clear direction to be able to look at if we have to do something. I think that if we ask question B and the answer is no, that, as Councillor Edwards has said, puts us in a position where we're actually not listening to our public. So, yeah.
Okay, I hate to do this mid-flow, but it is 3:30, and I did schedule something where we basically got a brief interview on a Bloomberg thing, which I just thought we were going to be able to take a break, and I realise it's landed right in the middle of our discussion, but I just wonder if we want to take 5 minutes anyway, just given there's a lot of differing views, and then we can come back and actually move an option. Otherwise, I think we're just going to go around in circles. Is that okay? Yeah. Cool. Thank you guys. So we'll just take 10 minutes to 3:40, and we'll come back. Thank you. Okay, thanks everyone. Okay, we've got our three options in front of us. Now, before an option is moved, I'd like to ask, is there anyone who has another option that they would like the council to consider? Councillor Mitchell.
I was happy to just make a comment on the previous discussion, but I think the more I've heard today, the less I'm convinced that either of these questions are the right question. There's an inference in these questions and the way they're written that if our residents say yes and other people's residents say yes, there will be work done with all of those councils, Wellington, Upper Hutt, Porirua and Greater Council, to explore possibilities of amalgamation in some form or another. We've been informed today that Wellington aren't even going to ask their residents whether they want that work to be done, which means either they intend to do it without asking their residents or not to do it at all. I have no idea the intention of Wellington. I think if we're looking for a steer from our residents on amalgamation, and before I move on to that, just saying I kind of agree with what Councillor Edwards has said, that if the leaders of our city and our council are telling us that amalgamation is inevitable, asking our residents now, do we want to go ahead with it, is kind of setting ourselves up in some kind of way. I feel like if we went back to when I was elected in 2019, if we'd had a referendum on the election ballot about exploring options to amalgamate our water services with other councils, we quite probably would have got a no from our community then. And we've been forced by government to do that, but we may have just ruled out those options as well. Anyway, coming back to the questions at hand, I think the question is for ourselves, if we want to read the mood of our city, is about us and kind of ruling out this working party that's inferred in the questions and just asking our residents whether Hutt City Council should proactively explore amalgamation options with other councils in the regions. It just takes away the part of it that it's either everyone in or not, which is what the question actually infers, that it's going to be everyone investigating it together. It's asking our residents, do you want us to investigate it as a council? And that doesn't mean that we're going to do it by ourselves, but it gives us options to work with the coalition of the willing and actually progress some work. The inference in this question, I feel, is that it's either all or nothing, everyone in, or we're not going to do it. And so that puts the decision in the hands of Upper Hutt's ratepayers if they ask the question. Wellington's councillors, they're not asking the question. I just kind of feel like we could be a bit more direct with our ratepayers. If we want the mood of whether they're interested in amalgamation or not, we should actually just be asking a more direct question.
Yeah, look, I think you're basically describing option B, but albeit I understand your point that you could infer in the current question that we're working with them and they could say, no, we're not interested to work with you. I just wonder if if people think that sounds good, we could take a moment just to wordsmith that up. Because I think it basically is in a line with work. Actually, it shouldn't be too difficult to align that with option B. If we just take, has any thoughts comfortable on that, Councillor Barrett?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I tend to agree actually with Councillor Mitchell. I think that's a simplified way of putting it without aligning us to any other council and just saying this is a question that we as a council are asking you.
Cool. Okay, so what we'll do is we're going to take another 5-minute break, and just while we wordsmith that up, and so we've got an option to put on the table. So otherwise, I think there was just a risk we'll continue going around in circles. Okay, thank you. Okay, we'll put the proposed amendment to option B on the screen. So it reads, should Hutt City Council explore amalgamation options with Wellington, Upper Hutt and Porirua City Councils and the Greater Wellington Regional Council, which combine relevant services and functions while keeping appropriate local services and decision-making? I think that is clearer. I can give you a bouquet for that, Councillor Mitchell. So, yep. Okay, comfortable with that? Again, comfortable with the question, I suppose. You don't necessarily have to support it, but comfortable with that wording? Okay, yes. So I will then move option B, the amended option B. Do I have a seconder for that? Councillor Briggs. Happy to open up for discussion. I don't think we need to restate our perspectives if you've already, but by all means, those who haven't had the opportunity. We've got Councillor Tupou and then Councillor Dyer.
Just a slightly different angle here, Mr. Mayor, and hearing from Councillor Barrett about, the long history. This is something that's been discussed for some time, and I think with the change of, the state of our economy and the cost of living, I think that gives us the impetus to put this to bed perhaps once and for all. And so I think the narrative has to be clear. We're not doing this because a government minister said yesterday that we need to start slimming down local government. We're doing this because this has been a long conversation and we now want to move this forward so we can progress as a city and a region. Kia ora.
Okay, Councillor Dyer.
Kia ora, thank you. While I do support that the recommended option B is a bit clearer, I think what's even more clearer is just not asking this question at all. I completely agree with Councillor Edwards' point of view. We would be spending tens of thousands of dollars asking a question for an answer. We are going to have to talk about amalgamation. It'll be a short-sighted referendum. Our ratepayers won't understand what is coming with the RMA reform, with the water reform. This needs a very thorough consultation, education piece. Absolutely, we have to have this conversation. Putting in a referendum is not a great idea. Absolutely, we need to have this conversation, but right now. I think keep it really simple, keep the focus on the far more important referendum of Māori awards, that is a binding referendum that we are being forced to do. That's the one we should be focusing on, and leave this conversation for the new councils of the region to have in the next training, because it's a conversation we have to have. And how long, if the people say no to have that conversation, how long do we wait? A term, 2 terms? We will have to have this conversation. It's a fact.
Okay, to close out, I'll just make or is there anyone else who hasn't had a chance to say their view? Councillor Mitchell?
Yeah, if I could just briefly comment, it feels really messy the way this whole situation has been handled, that it's come from another council unilaterally developing and agreeing to put in a question at their end, rather than a conversation about the region, about what's the best question to ask. I mean, even in this room, we've got a whole lot of different opinions across the region. So I just find the whole thing really frustrating that we've been put in this position without some kind of more thorough groundwork being done. Between our councils, I think probably between our councils, there would be agreement that we need to be talking about this, but the way it's been gone about and where it's landed with some councils asking questions and others not, and maybe asking different questions, is just such a mess.
Welcome to this topic for the last 20 years. Okay, so, and can I just say the final comment, sorry, Councillor Morgan, did you?
Kia ora. No, I'm just going to go, I've been oscillating on this whole conversation, but I go back to my initial point of it feels really rushed and really thrown in there without clear, but a lot of you have history and know this path as well. So I'm still, oscillating even right now.
Yep. Okay, just to close it out, can I say that I do understand the concern that has been raised, particularly by Councillor Edwards. I think articulated those issues well. At the same time, though, I do think we need to, in response to Councillor Dyer's comments, give our residents a bit more credit than what is being said there. They're not stupid. They can see, I think, the issues that are facing local government generally in the last wee while. The water debate discussion, the debate obviously around regional councils of late, all these issues are only going to get more steam, and I think that people do get that. And I think at our peril, we start to think that we are smarter than them and that we are trying to do things in a way that doesn't respect giving them an opportunity, which the biggest opportunity is to say, actually, do we want to even talk about it? I also would say that I think that this gives the incoming council a real good opportunity to understand where they focus their energies. If it does come back clearly that, hey, we don't want a bar of even looking at this, why would you then waste all your energy and time when you've got a whole heap of different priorities and issues that you potentially have to grapple with as a council as well? So I just think that this is a good opportunity personally, and I appreciate it would be better if you had everyone in the region doing it, but at the end of the day, this will still give some good information at a pretty good price, given we're having to do a poll anyway. So I'm going to put it to the vote. All those in favour say aye. Those against?
No.
What? Do we need to do a raised hands, or that sound like it passed?
Do you want it by division, do you? You can do it by division, Mr. Mayor, if you wish.
Okay, I'll just do it by, we don't necessarily by division. We just do it by hands, if that's okay. There's only one no. There's only one no? Okay, it's passed. Yep, maybe with that. Happy? Just want to make sure I've known that is the read of the room. Okay, it's passed. Okay, thanks everyone. Okay, move to remits for local government. That's page 363. Sam, welcome. Pretty self-explanatory, but feel free to go through any high-level comments and we'll get into it.
Yeah, kia ora, thank you. Yeah, as you say, self-explanatory, 5 remits, 4 of them relevant. As of yesterday, though, the first remit to do with security system payments is no longer relevant because the Remuneration Authority has agreed to support those. The other 3, aside from the bus services for schools and the region, which would be Greater Wellington, is still relevant.
Cool, okay. So what we'll quickly do is go through each of the 5 remits, obviously not remit 1 as for the comments, as Sam mentioned, which I think is great news from the Remuneration Authority. I think it's a positive step. So we'll move to item remit 2, which is improving joint management agreements. We're going to maybe try to go through this reasonably quickly. So if there is support, if there is clear support, let's not bother debating it. Is there support for this one? Yes. Okay. Tick. Alcohol licensing fees. Tick. Simon. Yep.
Please pass this one.
Remit 4, aligning public and school bus services. Yep. Yes. Remit 5, review of local government arrangements to achieve a better balance. Councillor Mitchell.
Yeah, I'd like to just kind of comment on this one, I guess, and reservedly to support it. We've just been talking about how inevitable this conversation is. I had a couple of reservations. One is that it wasn't actually entirely clear what was being proposed in terms of reviewing arrangements and functions and structure. Is that a discussion about amalgamation or getting a regional council boards, or is it something else? It wasn't altogether clear what they were actually proposing happens. The other reservation I had about it, and our officers noted it in their assessment, that there was a review into the future for local government done and tabled in 2023 and put in the scrap bin, I think, maybe by the end of that same year, if not early in the following year by the government. There was a huge amount of time and effort and thought put into that report by the people who were leading it, but by our sector, and actually at the cost of taxpayers, and if we're proposing to do the same thing again, I'd be quite reserved about whether we should support that or not without bilateral agreement from our major parties, at least, that they would support whatever the outcomes were. I just think it can be read that this suggestion is that we do that whole exercise again, and the risk is that the same thing will happen, that there'll be absolutely no change based on it. So I kind of support the intent and support LGNZ, of course, working with the government and councils to review those arrangements. It's just the degree to what it's done and what the possible outcomes be. I'd be a bit reserved about if it was another full-scale exercise like that that's likely to not bring about any change. And I guess that's some feedback that you could carry to LGNZ on our behalf, Mr. Mayor, rather than
rather than voting
again. Speaking to it in a meeting or something. It's just how LGNZ would go about it.
Yeah, it might be helpful to just get any points of clarification on that.
Yeah, this came about from a metro sector meeting where obviously the vast majority of ratepayers live in metro sector areas, but LGNZ quite often is a bit hidebound through the rural and provincial sector. So this is literally saying we metro sector think this is important. It's not and let's have a giant committee of inquiry and crack on. It's literally on that basis. So I think your worst fears won't be are understandable, but won't be recognised, if that's helpful.
Yeah, I think it's still very relevant what you're saying. So I can certainly, if we need to speak to this, or those advocating directly to Taronga as well, who will speak to it. Cool. Okay, Councillor Stallinger.
Just really to endorse Councillor Mitchell's comments. I've very much had the same thought when I read this. I think I'm probably a bit overdone with review fatigue of this nature, having been through and seen so many of them that achieve so little. But I appreciate the comments made by our Chief Executive, and I really think if there is an appetite, as Councillor Mitchell presented, for change in certain directions, then it's very much what we need to be on the front foot and engage comprehensively. If we get the feeling this is just LGNZ going to do some good work, come up with some good recommendations, and the government's not interested, then they should not be spending money, because there's plenty of other areas to invest their time.
I would say, based on previous experience with Remits, the conversations we've had around the table then are replicated at the AGM. So I have no doubt this will come up. I think if a number of members are thinking about that. So I think it's very helpful. Okay, so we will support on that understanding. So that is supporting all 4 remits, 2 through to 5. I'll move that. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Mitchell. All those in favour say aye. Did you want to speak? Yep.
Yeah, I did want to speak because even though it's no longer a live thing, I just wanted to comment briefly on Remit 1, which was the security issue, and it is an issue in our sector. A little bit surprising that we even got to a point where we had to go and ask the government to extend to us the same privileges they have for themselves in terms of keeping their elected members safe. It did make me think about some of the other inequities between members who are elected to central government and members who are elected to local government. It's something perhaps that anyone who's sitting around this table should think about next year in terms of LGNZ remits. The government gets KiwiSaver employer contributions, which we don't get as local government members. They have various other privileges as well. I think there's probably a place for something to be put to the government to take a good thorough look at how it treats elected members in local government compared to central government. So just putting that out there for now, something for people to think about and look at maybe over the coming year.
Thanks, Councillor. Councillor Stallinger.
Yeah, I did have a comment on that one, but once I saw the fact that it had already been implemented, I put that aside. And it really just made me think, to what extent are we at risk? And I think some of us certainly are, and I'd probably put those at the top table as the ones most often in the firing line when we have an angry or potentially violent person. My mind turned to some of our staff who I would say are more exposed than us. Animal control staff going and taking dogs from people's households where they may consider the dog as a family member, and then and so on. So that's just a thought I wanted to express, and maybe something that we could think about, because I would feel I wouldn't feel right myself installing a very expensive security system, which 4,500 is a very expensive security system on my place, knowing that some of our staff there are confronting much more risk than us. So I'll just leave it there.
I think the one positive thing on that is, certainly from my understanding, is there's a requirement for a assessment to be done as well. So that's, I think, going to be an important part of how it's actually implemented. Yeah. Yep. Yep. Okay. Councillor Tupou.
Mr. Mayor, I think also, you know, some of the induction that we had at the front end of our triennium was also helpful in terms of dealing with media. For me personally, it's more the hate mail, social media that I've experienced more than anything in the physical sense. But seeing the stories across the motu and just the fact that we live in an ever-changing and challenging world warrants this sort of support, where those assessments find that elected members need extra security. So I think you yourself, Mr. Mayor, have reminded me just to be, you know, aware of our surroundings, even leaving the building, going to your car and things like that. Kia ora.
Okay, I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour say aye. Those against no. Declare that carried. Moving through to item 15, which is exclusion of the public. That is to cover off item 16, which is Infrastructure Acceleration Fund, Stormwater and Wastewater Upgrades. So I'll move that members of the public be excluded from this part of the meeting, seconded by Councillor Briggs. All those in favour say aye. Those against no. Declare that carried.